Hey guys, Christopher here.
Hey guys, Noah here.
We have yet another very interesting topic that I think could again be considered rather controversial and have all sorts of different viewpoints. And I think almost any viewpoint that could come up from anywhere could hold its own weight. And I wouldn't necessarily shoot down anything that comes from this. So, since this topic was not really on my radar at all, and this morning when I messaged you, I was like, hey, what are we talking about? And you threw this one out there. I was like, whoa, I wasn't thinking about it at all. So, I'm going to let you introduce this.
Okay. First of all, I think maybe, given the fact that this is kind of like a reoccurring thing and like we're just talking about controversial, maybe we should just rename the podcast Controversial Talks with Noah and Christopher.
I'm
Because
not
that's
opposed
just,
to this.
it's just, but I think that's just also the nature of the paranormal. Because as we've said time and time again, nothing is or could be 100% proven. You know what I mean? So it's just always going to be controversial. To some extent, it's going to be controversial no matter what we talk about. Um, but a theme that's been kind of coming up with us recently and the stuff that we've been doing is obviously with your practice in witchcraft and stuff like that, and something that we've been kind of diving down here recently is like symbolism of like different pagan religions. So you have like Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, and then some other ones there too. Like there's just a plethora of them, but they all have their own sort of symbols. And the thing that's kind of weirdly connecting is this idea that it's all sort of connected in magical practice. And why does it have an effect on the universe? Like why do certain symbols actually seem to carry some sort of weight of the universe? And that's where we're going to discuss that. Our theories behind that, maybe why does this work, or maybe why it doesn't, and we're just kind of talking nonsense.
I want to go right from something you said earlier when just you and I were talking about the idea of some of these things being handed down. I want to go there right away.
Okay. So I guess I'll kind of just say it again for camera purposes. What kind of brought it up is I bought a new necklace, and this particular necklace, you can't really see it all that well, but it is Gungnir, which is Odin's spear, which is from Norse mythology, and it's got a few different Nordic symbols on there, and I just kind of had this idea or a theory that basically it's kind of like tied into like a bloodline or who you're descendant from type of thing, or maybe it's more tied into like past lives that you've lived. But it's basically this idea that everybody is spiritually connected to a certain mythology or something of that nature, and when someone of that nature uses those symbols, they're more powerful than maybe if somebody that wasn't connected to those mythologies would use them. It wouldn't quite be as potent as somebody that is spiritually connected to them would be. And so I, I don't know. It's a weird theory. It's an out there theory. I don't even necessarily know exactly how to put it into words to describe it 100% the way that I'm looking at it. But it's basically this idea that like everybody is kind of descended from something, and if you were to use those symbols from what you're spiritually connected with, it's going to be a lot stronger than if you try to use symbols from a different practice. And so it's also kind of tied into this idea that, like, how like everybody's like super interested in certain things. Like for me, growing up, one of the I've always been into every single mythology. I've always found all of them super interesting. But my absolute favorite one was always the Norse mythology. And here, coincidentally, we've been kind of getting we've been getting these hints that both you and I in a past life were connected to to the Nordic Vikings and that mythology. And so that's where I'm kind of thinking that I am spiritually connected to the Nordic paganism side of things. So that's where I've started diving into trying to understand their symbolism and for everything and what different things mean. So that's where, like, with all of these things that we've been getting into recently with some of the negative entities that we encounter and stuff like that, that's where I was like, I'm going to get an extra layer of protection from dealing with these type of things. And I don't know. So it's a weird one, and it's an out there one, but it's something that I'm kind of in the very infancy stage of understanding or even trying to put together. But what do you think?
I get what you're saying about having that deeper connection to something that there's a further connection from. I mean, I know through my work as a witch or just spiritually in general, when I've connected to or through a symbol, there's been times where, all right, there's this understanding that I'm using this for whatever particular purpose. There's an intention behind it. It is what it is. And there's other times, whether it's in discovering a symbol, finding a symbol, creating a symbol, and then realizing, oh, I didn't create that. That comes from somewhere. It feels
Right,
more like I've remembered it, or
right.
coming back to it was this sense of coming home.
I like the way that that's worded.
Yeah, because that's how it feels. And you mentioned the Norse symbolism specifically. I mean, that's part of who I am today. And I have reason to believe through the past life work I've done that that goes back a long, long, long time. I, if that's correct, I love that I've had an opportunity to strengthen that over all these lifetimes and to sustain that connection. Now, if every lifetime I had to start over and fall into something new and build from the ground up, I'm okay with that too. That's not a bad thing.
Right.
But I think having that foundation, and I think that was a word you used earlier too, the base. We were talking about that foundation, having that that's been built upon over and over again has really served me well.
My idea with the base or foundation was just basically this idea that, like, if we essentially are saying that magical practices are real, then we'll just, like, the word that always comes to mind whenever you talk about it is witchcraft. Witchcraft is simply the practice of magic, essentially, right?
Hmm?
And so if you're going to say that witchcraft is the practice of magic itself, so witchcraft therefore is kind of the base of the tree, and all of these different mythologies that have their own sort of symbolism or magical practices or something like that, they're the different branches of the tree, but they're all rooted and stem from magic itself. And so the part of the conversation kind of goes to, well, first of all, why is this real, or why does it work? And then once you talk about that and you kind of figure that out, then it moves to, well, how are there different versions of symbols that sometimes mean the same thing from different religions or different points of view, but so how do they do the same thing yet they look different? Or, and I think that's where a lot of you can kind of get into intent or
Right.
stuff like that. But I think it's even deeper than that. I don't even want to just say that, like, oh, it's just because it's the intent of what you're doing. I don't think that's it. I think that's a part of it, but I think it's much deeper than that. And I think it's like that's where you kind of get down the rabbit hole of, like, what does this mean?
Well, I think too, when we or anyone feeds something enough, gives something enough energy, not just intention. Yes, that's a huge part of it. I'm going to just take the word energy for now. That has a big part in why something works because it's being fed. It's going to work.
Right, I can see that. So let's kind of not backtrack, but let's kind of go back and try to answer a little bit of this first part that we just said about. So if we're going to say that magical practice is real, and it works.
Right.
Why does it work, or where does it come from? Possibly. What's your thoughts whenever I say that?
I'm going to go back to the word energy again because I feel like that's where everything starts. And we know that everything is made up of energy. We are made up of energy. There's layers and layers of energy all around us.
Hmm.
So I am going to go as far as saying magic is energy.
Right.
And I mean, if you want to use a different word for it, such as chi, using chi energy, that's
I think
connected to.
I think again, it's kind of like again because there's all different kinds of points of views and history behind it that like there's a plethora of words that could be used. For instance, science uses the word mass
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
where we kind of view energy as what makes up everything in the universe, that's how scientists understand mass. Mass is what makes up everything in the universe.
Right.
So again, it's just a different word for it. And as far as like right, I believe that essentially magic is the manipulation of energy.
Right.
And to kind of like make it maybe make it sound a little bit scientific because that's I feel like that's how I process things and understand it. And I feel like it's whenever we're talking about magic, it's simply the manipulation of energy. Somebody a long time ago figured out how to manipulate energy. And the reason that it's so hard for us to comprehend is because we can't see that we're doing it, we can't hear that we're doing it, and therefore it's hard to understand. But maybe try to look at it as possibly like basically how to put it in a nutshell how I view magic. Magic is essentially science that we don't yet understand. Because like a lot of things in today's world, like we make it make sense by trying to apply science to it. Like, oh, I believe this to happen, so let's do this and see if this happens, right? Well, magic to me is simply a form of science that we haven't yet mastered or understood.
Right.
And so this kind of gets into a little bit of how the symbols that we've been given or how we mix different like nature elements. I
Right.
think this is simply an algorithm that was handed down to us from something above. Now, we can get into different talks about was that the gods, was it aliens, was it one god, you know what I mean? Like there's all different kinds of ways in which you can take this, and we can kind of get into this a little bit as far as our view on this because we kind of have a different view on this. But I think just for the topic at hand, they were handed down from something higher than us, and it was essentially in an attempt to teach us the inner workings of the universe. And it's kind of like so even though it's like it's hard for us to comprehend because we can't see or hear anything happening, if you do this or you use this symbol and you add it to this is what happens.
Right.
It's essentially an algorithm on how the universe works.
Right. And if that's the case, if this is something that was handed down with that intention, I would say that in general, people have potentially done a really good job of deciphering it because we do know that magic works. And I think along the way, they've added to it. And I would think that whomever may have handed this down to us may have just looked at us every now and then and went, whoa, I didn't know that was going to go there, but well done. They've
Right.
added their own layer and made it
And
their own. So,
there's even there's even to me the portion of this that's almost like I almost feel like as well as maybe we have done with deciphering those things, I also feel like we've only scratched the very surface of the
right,
possibility and potential of what these things do. Because, like, um, another word that you can use for energy is frequencies.
Hmm.
So I know that a lot of people that have gotten into like extraterrestrial investigating and like looking into all that kind of stuff, a common theme that comes up a lot is like looking for frequencies. Because they talk about how like opening dimensional doors and stuff like that is like looking for the right frequency and playing that frequency at the right tone, at the right rate, stuff like that, right?
Right.
So again, it's an algorithm. You're figuring out how to place the pieces of the puzzle just in the right way to make something phenomenal happen, right? And
Right.
that's where I'm kind of like, I think it's the same with these symbols. So it's kind of like, let's just say hypothetically, with all the different Norse symbols, if you place the symbols at the right way in the right formation, is it possible that you could open something up like a dimensional gate, do crazy stuff like that? I think absolutely.
Right. I mean, we've already encountered some things of opening and closing doors using symbols, and that almost seems like it's such a small scale. Just imagine getting all the symbols involved and
Well, and that's where I was going to go with that next, is the idea that let's not even say just Nordic symbols is the key. It's like kind of like, again, back to this idea that every religion has a piece of the puzzle, and the problem is that nobody really talks to each other. They all just
right.
argue. They argue back and forth between I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right type of relationship, where maybe instead everybody should get together and try to figure out, hey, I think we've all got a piece of the puzzle. Let's figure out what we have right and what we have wrong, and everything that we have right, now let's plug it all together and see what happens. Because like maybe the thing here is that the Nordics have some symbols that are right, the Egyptians have some symbols that are right, and so on and so forth. And when you plug them all together to create a specific sigil or a specific set of symbols, that is the equation that does a specific thing. So if you unlock the equation to unlocking a door, that's what you get. If you unlock the equation for light speed travel, that's what you get.
Right.
The potential here is limitless.
Doesn't it almost make you want to go out and like form a council? Like, we don't need everybody to come together, but just like one from each that's devoted to figuring this out and is willing to have the conversations.
I absolutely. And I think that's where it's like that's one of the things that almost in the way that we do things, it's kind of what we want. We want that conversation to happen. We're
Right.
kind of wanting to form the Illuminati of the paranormal community, essentially.
I'm not going to deny that.
I mean, but it's just kind of like one of those things where it's like we want that open conversation, because very much in which the way that I think the universe works is that nobody is necessarily 100% correct.
Right.
We all have a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
And yeah, it's just it's the potential here is absolutely limitless. And I think another thing, and that's why, like, even just in the paranormal community, I think what people need to start maybe doing a little bit more is, instead of just looking at the paranormal community as like, oh, I just hunt for ghosts, it's like, I also like to look into cryptics. I like to look into UFO, like alien type stuff, and also include that with the spirits, because everything unlocks a portion of the universe and how it works.
Right.
And here recently we've gotten some weird crossovers, and that's why it's even furthering my theory about this. There's been some weird crossovers with those things, and even if you look into old ancient texts that the Egyptians had, that the Norse had, that the Greeks had, like, they have weird things about those kind of realms. And it's weird that over time and space they just keep coming up.
Right. It's really interesting to think about how, well, you're right. They do have that over and over again, not just the Norse, but all different pantheons have that. It seems like in so many ways we've lost that. And
Yeah.
I mean, what happened that caused that? I think people stopped listening to each other.
I think over time, yeah, that we've just the human race has just become more and more bitter over time, and it's very much turned into I'm right and you're wrong.
Right.
Nobody's willing to admit that they might have the wrong idea about something. Once they get something into their head and they're for sure about it, there's no room for anything else there. And I'm not trying to say this to like put other people down, because I'm guilty of that. And that's something that I'm working on as far as being more open to other ideas, because sometimes I have the wrong idea. Nobody's perfect in that. I'm just saying that, like, hey, we have to acknowledge that that is a problem that we all do, because the only way that you can solve the problem is to first acknowledge that there is a problem.
Right. Kind of interesting to think that if this was a blueprint or something that was handed to us and we were making all this great progress, and then people just took a turn toward where they are today, and whoever handed that down was like, screw you, I'm going to take this away until you're ready for it again.
Well, and then but then there's the idea too that, like, so if there was something that handed these things down to us
Right.
for furthering our knowledge and becoming more spiritually enlightened and stuff like that, there's also the fact that there would also be the opposite side of that, that wouldn't want to see us progress and are going to be doing things specifically to manipulate us into having the wrong information and cutting, like, the divide in us. I think they would specifically be doing things to turn us against each other, because the more and more that we turn against each other and we don't work together, we're never going to get the right answer. We're just going to
Right.
keep arguing. So there's that side of things too.
That's a lot to think about. I mean, it makes sense, but that
It's
actually
it's
just gives me chills to think of it that way.
it's deep, but it's kind of like so where I derive a lot of this idea is my study in the Anunnaki,
Hmm.
because for anybody that is into the Anunnaki is going to kind of know where I'm going with this. But the theory about the Anunnaki was the Anunnaki were the ones that actually created us, and essentially when they came down to Earth and created us through genetics and splicing our DNA, well, splicing the DNA of themselves along with some other alien species, they were able to come up with genetic, uh, our genetic code,
Right.
and created us. And what I think is that they had all different kinds of sub layers of the Anunnaki, and this is where all of the ancient cultures, like the Nordics and the Greek and the Egyptians, over time and space, again, were seeing, rather than necessarily gods, they were seeing these higher beings, the Anunnaki, right?
Right.
And some might call them angels, some might call them demons, some might call them gods, because I think they possessed higher abilities than we possess. And I think it was directly tied into them being more spiritually enlightened. Because if you think about it, they claim that we only use like 10% of our brain, right?
Right.
Imagine if you unlocked more. If you unlocked more of your potential, what you might be able to do. So I think that these abilities that they wrote in scripture and hieroglyphics and stuff like that about gods hurling thunderbolts, I don't think that was made up. I think they saw that, and what they were seeing was a being that was more spiritually enlightened, that had more access to the universe and was able to do those things. So therefore, we have that potential, but it's been kind of taken away, because my theory is that the War of the Gods was the war of the Anunnaki, where one side was very much, we want to see them prosper, we want to see them become more spiritually enlightened like us, and then there was the other side that was like, hell no, they make the perfect slave race, So we're just going to keep making them slaves so they do all our work for us so we can just sit up here and eat grapes all day.
Right.
So I think that was where the War of the Gods happened. And the people that lived back in those days, they didn't write those ancient hieroglyphics just for the hell of it. You know what I mean? Like they were depicting what they saw. So I can't take what they're saying as like absolute malarkey. I think that happened. It's just that
Right.
it's like the game of telephone throughout all these years of history. It gets passed down after generation, and it's kind of like where it started out as this and now it's this because it's just misinformation or you've been misguided or manipulated and stuff like that. And that's where I think as time has went on, that's where again we're still at odds, where there's always going to be that war of the side that wants to help us and prosper and learn how the universe works, and then there's going to be the side that wants to manipulate us and keep us in our little bubble where we're just their little slave race, and we don't ask questions. We you know what I mean? We don't put too much
Right.
thought into it. We just do our 9 to 5 day where we go and work to make money, and then we go home and we do our little thing to just wind down for the day, and that's it. That's what they want us to do.
Right. I think another layer worth throwing out there too, with these things being handed down and were they manipulated over time? How did that happen? Just as we pass things along, like the game of telephone, that's a perfect reference. I think people sometimes just change things to make sense based on the time they're living in.
Right.
As
There's
things
that.
are handed down, they don't make sense anymore the way they did hundreds or thousands of years ago. So people
Right.
manipulate. I'm going to use the word manipulate, even though that's not the intention here. They just try to make it fit their
Would
experience and
would maybe
their
like
life.
maybe misinterpret be a better word for that specifically,
Yeah, maybe.
because
Yeah.
just because like if we look at it from our point of view, it's like obviously in today's world we process information in a specific way because it's what makes sense. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm gonna say normal people, because who is normal, right? But for most people in today's world, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about just instantly gets thrown away as like, oh, you're crazy. That's so crazy. Like, hell no, that's not possible. Because they don't know how to make it make sense, or it's scary to them, the thought of some of these things. So
Right.
whether it's scary or they don't know how to make it make sense, they just brush it off because it doesn't make sense. I don't know how to process this information. Where we're simply just saying, no, I think that is 100% possible, but let's find the answer of how it's possible or why it's possible.
Right. And there's another whole thing. Just so many people just accept something because it's what they were told, because it's just what it is and it's always been, and they don't want to know the answer. They don't want to
Oh,
know
you see, you
how.
you see that a lot, and
Yes, I
you see
think
you see that a lot where it's like basically where people get told something and they'll get told something from one ref source, right? And then that's what's factual, and then
right.
anything else that they hear isn't possible. And it's like you can't look at the world like that, because do you understand how, I'm just going to come out and say it, you know how naive that is?
Right.
Like, you can't look at the first thing that somebody says and take it as 100% factual. You got to do your own thinking. So look at A, B, C, D, and E, see what they all say, and then ask yourself what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. What lines up with what's actually going on, and what is possibly being misinformed, misinterpreted, or just straight up manipulated.
Right.
And you see that a lot in today's world. And that's what, again, drives into all the arguing. Nobody's on the same page. Everybody wants to argue. Or as soon as you have a different opinion about something than somebody else, you're wrong, or you're crazy, or just something of that nature.
Right. One thing I'll say about myself, not even talking about myself from the psychic perspective, just
Mhm.
general every day as a human being, I don't feel like when I open my mouth, I'm wrong very often. And I mean, here's why. One, I'm very deliberate in how I word everything down to every specific word. And two, I like to dig into everything. I mean,
Right.
before I'm going to put it out there, before I'm going to put my stamp on it and say, this is what is, I've got to know that that's it.
Right. You have a reason for saying this is why I believe this. You're not just hearing something and then saying, "Oh, this is factual." It's like you're trying to go that extra deeper level of researching something to say that okay, I think this is what it is just based off my own research, but at the same time, you're not unwilling to, hey, there's the possibility I'm wrong. Or
Right.
if somebody comes up with something better or makes more sense, I'll say I'm wrong. And that's the point of it. That to me is how it's supposed to be. Don't just
Right.
close your mind off just because you had a really good feeling about something. And
Right.
again, that's where it's like, I'm not saying this to put anybody down or make them feel like they do this. It's just, I do this sometimes. And I'm working on that. I'm working on being better about not doing that and opening myself up to, I think people might have better opinions at times than I do. And we need to work a little bit better together. That's just human nature. We all do that. We just need to
Right.
acknowledge that we do that, so therefore we can fix that problem. Because if you just sit in denial, like, oh well, I don't do that. Yes, you do. That there, yes, you do.
Right. Yeah, I think everybody's done it. I've done it. But I mean, this is why you'll so often hear me say, I've got something, but I'm going to hang on to that right now
Right.
because I
Right.
need just that little bit more before I can put it out there.
Right. Which makes sense to me. I get
Although I'm sure it gets very annoying sometimes.
that. I don't know if I'd use the word annoying. It's more of like it's suspenseful all the time. Like whenever, because like I can't read your mind, so I'm just sitting there like, what's he thinking about right now? But there are times that it is where we're like, I feel like we've worked together enough at this point where like you'll be thinking something or I'll be thinking of something and we'll have a certain look on our face and it's like we just know.
Right.
We may not know specifically, but we know something's up.
Right.
This is one of those topics that, again, we can go on and on and on about it. And there's so many layers to this that it's one of those ones that I think today is more of just going to be kind of like the surface of it. And it's one that I want to revisit when we have more people join us on this. It's kind of like a bigger podcast.
Oh,
You know
for
what I
sure.
mean? Because this is I'd love to hear from people's different ideologies and perspectives on this topic, because this is one that is so controversial because there's so many different opinions and ideas about it. It's been around for how long? You know what I mean?
Right. So going back to the idea of symbols,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever had an experience where you feel you've created something, like not stepping into it, not remembering it, not coming back to it, but in any given purpose, you had to create something, infuse it with your own intention? Have you had an experience to do that?
Yeah, and you'll remember the experience as soon as I say it. The very first time that we ever investigated together, way before Crooked Path, and this was our very first investigation together at the Ross House.
Right.
And we were dealing with something, and um, there was a symbol that I saw whenever we kind of did like it was kind of like a hypnosis session in a way to
Right.
kind of walk me through the building and stuff like that spiritually. And there was a specific symbol that I saw. What's funny about this is I don't remember specifically what it looked like. It was kind of like one of those moments where I remembered it in the moment, and then it was like afterwards, it's like it's there in my head somewhere, but I can't remember it. It's like something's being blocked that I can't remember it. But I remember when I did see that drawing, it was almost kind of like at the time I felt like I was making it, but then when I sat and thought about it more, it was almost like, I don't think so. I think I'm seeing a specific symbol that is from somewhere. Now,
Right.
specifically, I was tying it into, it felt more Egyptian symbolism for me
Mhm.
at the time. I could be wrong, but at the time of seeing it, it looked very much like an Egyptian hieroglyphic.
I barely remember what it looked like. I know
Right,
you drew it, and I told you recently that I went to reference that, and that page was gone from those notes.
right,
Still don't know what that's about.
right. And you're very good about organization and keeping that stuff together. And the fact that that just went missing boggles my mind.
One page. Everything else is still there.
I just wonder if it's one of those things to where like we're not meant to know it right now. Kind of like what you said in the beginning of this. We're not meant to know it right now, but it'll come back up when we need it.
Right. Probably. That makes sense.
I don't know.
I'll be thinking about that for the rest of the night.
My mind goes in so many places all the time. It's like all the time people will see me just, and I know you see me do this all the time. I'll just be sitting there with a blank stare, just staring off into nothing, and it's because I'm like in such deep thought.
Right.
My mind goes somewhere else.
No, I know. I usually look at you and say, what's on your mind? Because I can tell it's something likely of great importance.
Which kind of goes back into last week's topic about the intuition side of things. Like I don't know why I do that. And it seems to be that, like what you said, a lot of times when I say something like that, when I've been in deep thought about something, it typically is, at least for what we're working on, of some sort of importance, which is it's weird.
My mind is just still spinning with all the different directions we could go with symbols. I mean, thinking of the tarot. I mean, the tarot is nothing but symbols when you think
Right,
of where all that came from and how all those different symbols mean different things to different people in different cultures.
right,
I mean, my body is covered in symbols. I've got them everywhere.
right. And then it's kind of like I've made a joke about this. But like for instance, like on my arm here, I have the symbolism from Lord of the Rings, right? Now,
Right.
that's a completely made up symbol. That has nothing to do with history or anything like that. But what's the possibility that you take a symbol, you put a specific intent into that, and then you put enough energy into it, and it becomes its own symbol?
Oh, I think 100% it can and does. 100%. I'm not going to go into depth on this, but I had 2 nights in one particular location for an investigation where a number of my tattoos were being called out throughout the night and what their purposes were going to be throughout that investigation.
Right. That's it's weird. Is the
It is
only
weird.
word that I can establish with it. It's just weird because again, we don't know how to comprehend what we're talking about, and that's why people might watch this one and be like, "These guys are freaking nuts." But I own that. I own it because I'm just not okay with simply going about my daily life and being okay with the status quo. You know what I mean? Like I'm just
Absolutely.
so interested in how the universe works that I want to ask these controversial topics, or maybe make myself look crazy for a little bit, just because I'm so interested in figuring out how the freaking universe works. You know
Well,
what I
and
mean?
maybe throwing something out there that's completely crazy will be enough to get somebody else to just think about something a little bit differently or to
And it
consider something they hadn't considered before, and who knows where
right,
that takes them. So I'm
right,
willing to make myself sound crazy if that's where it goes.
yeah, exactly. And I wish more people were okay with that.
Right.
I wish more people were okay with that.
Yeah, it just comes back to the whole idea of people talking to each other and conversation being something that's so much missing from society.
It's like, right, like look back, like, you know, look at things like even just as soon as like the 80s, how I think people were a lot nicer to each other back then,
Right.
or like compared to what they are today, as far as like just like being friendly to somebody you don't know, right? Where now everybody's so guarded, like nobody trusts anybody.
Right.
And I can understand, like, especially working where I work, I can understand why. It's just a shame that that's where we are. But,
Right.
like, let's take where we are now, where nobody trusts anybody, back to the 80s, where there was still, like, obviously there's that tension, and there always has been some sort of tension. And we have it, but it's less than what it is now. And then go back to, like, the 50s. The 50s,
Right.
like where everybody was like, hey, how you doing? And you know what I mean? Like people would just pass each other and they're super nice to each other and stuff like that. It's like just how even in a short span of time versus like how many thousands of years this world has been here, how even just in the short period of time things have de- digressed in such
Right.
a rapid state.
It would be interesting to break this down by decade and just look at spiritual mindsets from decade to decade and what shifted, what may have caused that shift. That would be for another day, but
I think
that would be
another thing,
interesting to look at.
right, I 1,000% agree with that. And I think another thing to possibly look at with this and why things are the way it is because of technology. I think technology and the advancements in technology is especially in the media,
Right.
that's been a big driving force in why nobody talks to each other anymore, why nobody trusts anybody anymore.
Right.
I think that's a huge factor. So therefore, I have to ask the question, was the media something that was created from the influence of the side of the higher beings that wanted to create that wedge between us?
That's a very interesting thought because when you think about it at its base, at its core, in so many ways it does the opposite of what you think it would be intended.
Well, whenever like say let's take Facebook as a pure example, right? When Facebook was created, it was created to be this nice little thing to where like you get to connect with people that you haven't seen in a long time or anything like that. Everything is said in such a positive way, right? Like, oh, it's such a great thing. And look at it today. Now, I'm not saying that good things don't come from Facebook. Hell, I made a Facebook about my wife's birthday today. That's a good thing,
Right.
right? But look at all the negativity that comes from it. I'm willing to say this, whether people agree with me or not. There's a lot more negative that comes from it than good.
Right.
Look at all the arguing that people do on there. Look at go. Let's make a go make a Facebook post that has a controversial topic and look at the comments later. Just go look at the comments later.
Hey, I told you recently somebody was coming at me for my love of Buc-ee's. And I was ready to tear him down because
Right?
Buc-ee's is my Disneyland.
Right. There's all sorts of negativity that comes from it. So you have to ask the question in the sense of like, was that something that was created from the influence of the side of the higher being that wanted to create that divide? And this was a tool. This was one of their tools that they were going to use. And I think if
Right.
that's what the purpose was, they've done a fantastic job of doing that.
Right. And if that's a possibility, there's also the possibility that this was something that came from the other side, the one that did want us to move forward and advance and grow, but the other side got a hold of it and warped it.
Manipulated it. Yeah, manipulated it.
Right.
Right. That's possible too. There there's all kinds of ways that this
Right.
can be
Either
taken.
way, it takes us to the same result.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that just gives me chills too.
I think I think the thing that we have to remember, there's a deeper level or importance to everything. Nothing is done just because of the sake of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's always a purpose. So I think even in everybody's daily lives, start to really look at something and then try to dissect it. What's the purpose of it? Why was it created? How is it being used? Why is it being used? Ask those
Right.
type of questions to really start to dive down the inner meaning of everything that's going around you. And I think once you start to understand the purpose of everything and why it's being used, how it's being used, I think then that's where you can start to maybe take control of your own life in a sense.
Right. Right. And there's a whole thing there too. I mean, is that what it's all about? Just taking control of your own life? Is that a part of what they wanted us to do potentially? That
Right.
for a
Well,
while we had it going and then threw it away.
well, again, and it's like one of those things. Like it's like where I feel like everything, all the potential of the universe is right there. You just have to reach out and grab it.
Right.
But if you never even look to grab, you're never going to get anywhere. You're just going to stay stagnant.
Right.
So yeah, it's just this is an ongoing thing. It's never ending.
Right. Right. And I wouldn't even use the word cycle. It's not a cycle. It's like somewhere there was just this stop. It's like we just got stuck. And hopefully we'll get through that.
Right.
And that too, I mean, what differentiates between those who do continue to dig for answers and want to know more?
Right.
I'm wording it that way on purpose. I'm not saying who want to know the answers. I'm saying who want to know more. I have my reasons for saying it that way.
Right.
Versus those that just don't. What truly differentiates those two different types of people?
I think it's not necessarily as simple as saying like like there's one particular thing. I think it's like you have a multitude of reasons. Like for instance, like one is like fear of the unknown. They don't
Right.
want to know because it's scary, you know. And it's kind of like I can understand from the point of view like I grew up in the Christian church, so I very much believed in that side of religion and stuff like that. And when I was first starting to kind of come out of that, it was scary as hell because it was basically coming to terms with this idea that like, oh, so like the heaven in which I've been told about doesn't exist. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a version of a heaven, but it's just not the one that I was told about and I knew about, supposedly,
Right.
right? So then when you're told about something that you thought was so true is not possibly true, it's a scary thing. So now you have to come to terms with like, oh, so what the hell do I know? It's a scary thought.
Yeah.
There's that. There's the side of things where like maybe people don't want to talk about the ideas that they have in their head because they're afraid people are going to be like, you're crazy. They're afraid of people's reactions. There's that too. I mean,
Right.
there's a multitude of reasons why people might react the way that they do or not search for knowledge the way that we think maybe they should.
It's interesting. I recently had an opportunity to connect with someone, and I'm not going to say in what capacity or how or where,
Right.
but they're going very much through that process of realizing that so much of what they've held on to all their life just it's not the answer for them. And a big part of the process they're going through right now does relate to symbolism and how they're going to either erase certain symbolism from their life or reframe it. And watching them go through this process and guiding them through this process a bit and seeing, I'm not knowing that I was seeing fear in that moment, although it's a very valid thing that you brought that up.
Right.
It was just seeing pain. I mean, this was so hard for this person to, and I try to look at it as, I mean, you've not wasted time. You got something from that, but now you're growing. Now you're evolving. Look at it that way. Don't look at it like you've wasted time and you've had these misplaced beliefs. You got
Right.
something out of it. It carried you this far. Now it's
Right.
time for something new.
Right. I think you're 100% right in that, because that's how I think we have to look at things. Like, you didn't waste time. It got you where you needed to be, and now you're growing. And
Right.
your rate of growth doesn't, like, don't compare that to somebody else, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
don't look at like where you're at in life versus where somebody else is at life like you're failing. No,
Right.
you are on your own path. And you're everything is happening in which the way that you need it to happen to end up where you need to be.
Oh, for sure.
And so for all my years of that I was in the Christian church, that got me to where I needed to be to then learn and grow and understand things in the way that I do now. And where I'm at right now is going to lead me into where I'll be in the future where I need to be.
Right.
It all has a purpose. And
Oh, definitely.
you just have to believe in it. You have to keep going. Don't get discouraged when you feel like you're stuck. Just look
Right.
at it as, hey, just because I'm stuck right now doesn't mean I'm going to be stuck later.
Right.
Or if you're stuck right now, maybe it's because there's something around you that you're supposed to notice and you haven't noticed it yet. So just keep looking around, looking at your surroundings. Try to dissect everything that's happening around you so you can better understand what it is you're supposed to notice so you're ready to move on to the next step.
Right. It's like our death card in the tarot. People see that death card come up and they have no idea what it actually means. They just see death. And I
Right.
always see the look on their face. I see that they stop breathing for a second. So whenever I flip that card over, I try to almost instantly take this deep breath and go, oh, my favorite card. Just I want them to know before we even start dissecting it that stop, set that to the side. You don't need to be afraid of this. But at its core, it represents change and transformation. And so many people do fear that just as much as death.
They might also just like whenever you flip the death card over and you're like, oh, my favorite. They might just also be like, this guy likes death.
Right. They flip my table over on me and run out of the room. I mean, much of what I do, I am surrounded by death. So
Yeah.
there's that.
They'd be like, this guy's a freaking serial killer. Hopefully not, but
No, definitely not.
I'm not saying no. I'm not saying that you
Oh,
are.
you
I'm
mean
saying
hopefully they're not thinking that? That's what
that's what
you're
I'm
saying.
saying. Yeah, I'm not saying that you are. I'm saying that hopefully that's not what they think when you say that. No, I wasn't
I
implying.
completely misinterpreted that.
Yeah, I wasn't implying that like maybe you were a serial killer. Like no, it's just maybe when you flip that card over and you're like, "Oh, that's my favorite card." They might be sitting there thinking like this guy might be a serial killer. Like, what the hell?
That went sideways.
Ooh.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm sweating.
I guess I guess that's a nice way to end today's conversation.
I think so.
Oh,
As
well,
always, leave us comments. Tell us what you think. We're not going to tell you you're wrong. We just want to
right.
hear what you think. What are your beliefs? What
I
have you
swear
learned?
I swear I'm not going to show up to your house and just be like, "You're wrong." It's not going to happen. I just want to know what you think. I want to know I want to know how you view the world. What have you found to be true in your way of looking at things? Just let us know. Just let us know.
Right. For sure.
Well, as always, I've been Noah.
See you guys next week.
See you guys next week.